Merritt stood outside room 1847 of the Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Chicago, his hand trembling as he gripped the bouquet of white orchids, Sloane's favorite flowers. The hallway was silent except for the soft hum of the ice machine down the corridor and the pounding of his own heart. He'd flown 6 hours from Seattle to surprise his wife on what was supposed to be the loneliest week of their 23-year marriage. Instead, he was about to discover that loneliness had nothing to do with distance. He raised his fist to knock, then hesitated. Through the heavy hotel door, he heard something that made his blood run cold. A whisper, soft and intimate, followed by Sloane's unmistakable laugh. Not the polite, professional laugh she used with colleagues. The real one, the one she reserved for moments of genuine joy. The one that used to be only for him. "Say it again," her voice drifted through the door, playful and tender in a way that shattered something fundamental in Merritt's chest. The orchid slipped from his fingers, landing on the carpeted floor with a soft thud that nobody inside that room would ever hear. His legs felt like they'd forgotten how to hold his weight. 23 years of marriage, of trust, of building a life together. All of it crumbling in the space between one heartbeat and the next. But to understand how Merritt arrived at that door, at that moment of devastation, we have to go back to 3 weeks earlier, when everything still made sense. The kitchen in their Bellingham home smelled like cinnamon and coffee on that Sunday morning in late September. Merritt was making his specialty, French toast with caramelized apples, while Sloane sat at their breakfast nook, her laptop open, reading glasses perched on her nose. Sunlight streamed through the bay windows, catching the silver strands that had started appearing in her auburn hair over the past year. She was 51 now, and Merritt thought she'd never been more beautiful. "The conference is in Chicago," Sloane said, scrolling through her email. 3 days, maybe 4 if they extend the workshops. I hate being away from you that long." Merritt flipped the French toast, watching the golden edges crisp. "It's your big presentation, sweetheart. The board's been talking about your sustainability initiative for months. This is your moment to shine." Sloane closed her laptop and walked over to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. She rested her cheek against his shoulder blade, a gesture so familiar it had become their own private language. "What did I do to deserve you, Merritt Holloway?" He turned in her embrace, touching his forehead to hers. "You said yes when I asked you to marry me in that ridiculous way, with the ring hidden in the popcorn at the drive-in movie." "You almost made me choke," she laughed. And there it was again. That genuine sound of joy that he'd fallen in love with 25 years ago when they'd met at a community garden project in Portland. Their love story wasn't the dramatic kind that people made movies about. It was built on Sunday mornings like this, on quiet conversations and shared dreams, on weathering storms together. They'd survived Sloane's father's death, Merritt's failed business venture that nearly bankrupted them, and the crushing disappointment of learning they couldn't have children. Through it all, they'd held on to each other like shipwreck survivors clinging to the same piece of driftwood. That's what made the betrayal so incomprehensible. They weren't the couple who grew apart. They weren't the ones who stopped trying. The day Sloane left for Chicago, Merritt drove her to the airport. She was wearing her navy blue power suit, the one she saved for important presentations. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she'd applied just enough makeup to look professional, but not overdone. She was nervous. He could tell by the way she kept adjusting her briefcase strap. "You're going to be amazing," he told her at the departure drop-off, pulling her close. "Call me when you land. Okay?" "Always," she promised, kissing him softly. "I love you, Merritt. So much." "Love you more," he said, their old playful exchange that had become ritual. He watched her disappear into the terminal, feeling that familiar ache of missing her already. They'd spent very few nights apart in their entire marriage. The house would feel empty without her presence, without her humming while she cooked, without her stealing the covers at night. For the first 2 days, everything seemed normal. Sloane called him every evening, telling him about her presentation, which had gone perfectly, the networking dinners, exhausting but productive, and the other conference attendees, mostly boring corporate types. She FaceTimed him before bed, showing him her hotel room, a standard business suite with generic artwork and a view of the Chicago skyline. "I miss our bed," she said, her face filling his phone screen. "This mattress is too firm." "Only 2 more days," Merritt reminded her. "Then you'll be home and I'll make you that mushroom risotto you've been craving." Something flickered across her face, too quick for him to interpret. "Can't wait," she said. "I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow with the workshop sessions." "Sweet dreams, Sloane. Love you." "Love you too." That night, Merritt couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. He found himself wandering through their home, looking at the photographs that chronicled their life together. Their wedding day at that small vineyard in Napa. The trip to Iceland for their 10th anniversary. Sloane's 50th birthday party last year, where she'd laughed until she cried at the ridiculous roast their friends had put together. He picked up a framed photo from the mantel, the 2 of them at the Grand Canyon, both sunburned and grinning, taken just last summer. Sloane had surprised him with that trip, knowing how much he'd always wanted to see it. She'd planned every detail, from the sunrise hike to the little inn she'd booked with a porch overlooking the canyon. That's when the idea struck him. Why not surprise her back? Why not fly to Chicago and take her to dinner on her last night there? They could celebrate her successful presentation, maybe extend her stay by a day and explore the city together. It would be romantic, spontaneous. Everything they'd promised each other they'd continue to be even after all these years. He booked a flight for the next afternoon, feeling like a teenager planning his first grand gesture. He didn't tell Sloane. That would ruin the surprise. Instead, he texted their neighbor Vivian to ask if she could water their plants for an extra day. He packed a small overnight bag, including the dress shirt Sloane had bought him for his birthday, saying it made his eyes look impossibly blue. On the plane to Chicago, Merritt felt genuinely excited. He imagined the look on Sloane's face when he knocked on her hotel door. She'd probably yell at him for spending money on an impulsive flight. But then she'd laugh and pull him into the room and they'd order room service and talk until midnight like they used to when they were younger. He tried calling her when he landed at O'Hare, but she didn't pick up. Probably in one of those workshop sessions, he thought. He sent her a text. "Hope your day is going well. Miss you." She didn't respond. But that wasn't unusual when she was working. The Grand Meridian Hotel was exactly the kind of place Sloane's company would choose. Elegant, but not ostentatious, catering to business travelers who valued efficiency over luxury. Merritt checked his reflection in the lobby's mirror-like columns, suddenly second-guessing his spontaneity. Maybe this was silly. Maybe she'd be too tired to appreciate the gesture. But he was already here. He'd come all this way. He approached the front desk, where a young woman with a name tag that read Priya greeted him with a professional smile. "Good evening. How can I help you?" "I'm here to surprise my wife," Merritt said, feeling both proud and slightly foolish. "She's staying here for a conference. Sloane Holloway, room—" He checked his phone where he'd written down the information. "Room 1847. Priya's fingers flew across her keyboard. Then her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Something in her eyes that Merritt would later recognize as pity. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't give out guest room numbers for privacy reasons." "I understand," Merritt said quickly. "I already know the room number. I just wanted to maybe leave flowers or something to be delivered." another flicker in her expression. Of course, we can arrange that. But Merritt had already decided he wanted to deliver them himself. He thanked Priya and walked away from the desk, heading toward the hotel's gift shop where he purchased the bouquet of white orchids. Sloane had carried white orchids at their wedding. She'd chosen them because they meant love, beauty, and refinement in the Victorian language of flowers, a detail so quintessentially Sloane, who loved knowing the meaning behind things. The elevator ride to the 18th floor felt eternal. Merritt practiced what he'd say. Surprise seemed too casual. I couldn't stand another night without you. Felt more accurate, but maybe too intense. Maybe he'd just smile and let the orchids speak for themselves. The hallway on the 18th floor was hushed, insulated by thick carpet and expensive soundproofing. Merritt found room 1847 and stood before it, suddenly nervous in a way that made him feel young again. His hand was actually shaking as he raised it to knock. That's when he heard it. The voices from inside. First, a man's voice, low and intimate in a way that made every muscle in Merritt's body tense. You're incredible, you know that? Then Sloane's laugh. That real, genuine laugh. Say it again, she said. And there was something in her voice, a softness, a vulnerability that Merritt recognized because it used to be only for him. The orchids fell from his hands. Time seemed to slow down and speed up simultaneously. His mind scrambled for innocent explanations. A colleague. Just a colleague celebrating her successful presentation. People laughed with colleagues all the time. The incredible could be about her presentation. The intimate tone could be. But he knew. Deep in that place where instinct lives, where the body knows truth before the mind can accept it, he knew. His hand found the door handle before his brain caught up with his actions. It turned easily. She hadn't locked it. Why would she? She wasn't expecting him. She thought he was 3,000 miles away, trusting her, missing her, planning what he'd cook for her homecoming dinner. The door swung open silently on well-oiled hinges. The scene that greeted him would be burned into his memory forever, replacing every good memory he had with this single, devastating image. Sloane stood by the window in a hotel robe that wasn't quite closed, the Chicago skyline glittering behind her like a mockery of romance. And there, sitting on the edge of the bed in nothing but dress pants, was a man Merritt had never seen before. Younger than both of them, maybe 40, with the kind of confident posture that spoke of someone who'd never questioned his right to take what he wanted. But what shattered Merritt completely wasn't the scene itself. It was the expression on Sloane's face in that frozen moment before she realized who was standing in the doorway. She was looking at this stranger with an expression Merritt recognized because he'd been looking at her that same way for 23 years. She was looking at him with love. "Merritt," Sloane gasped, her hand flying to her throat, the robe falling open slightly before she clutched it closed. Her face drained of color, her eyes widening with a horror that might have been comical in any other context. The man on the bed turned, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something almost like guilt in rapid succession. "Oh, Christ," he muttered, reaching for his shirt. Merritt couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He stood there with white orchids scattered at his feet, watching his entire life rearrange itself into a narrative he didn't recognize. Every memory was now suspect. Every "I love you" now carried a question mark. Every moment of trust now felt like foolishness. How long? The words came out of him hoarse, barely a whisper. He didn't recognize his own voice. "Merritt, please." Sloane took a step toward him, her hand outstretched. "How long?" he asked again, louder this time, and he saw her flinch. The man on the bed, this stranger who had somehow become the most important person in his wife's secret life, stood up, maintaining a careful distance. Maybe I should— Don't, Merritt said, his eyes never leaving Sloane's face. Don't you dare leave. I want to know who you are. I want to know who's been touching my wife. Who's been— His voice cracked, the words too painful to complete. His name is Dashiell, Sloane said quietly, and even now, even in this moment of complete devastation, there was a tenderness in the way she said this stranger's name that drove a fresh spike of agony through Merritt's chest. I don't care what he is, Merritt interrupted, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. How long, Sloane? How long have you been lying to me? A tear slid down her cheek, and Merritt felt a surge of rage at the sight of it. She didn't get to cry. She didn't get to be the victim in this scenario she'd orchestrated. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of deception. Half a year of coming home to him, sleeping beside him, making love to him, all while maintaining this other life. 6 months of I love yous that were lies. 6 months of planning their future while she was building a present with someone else. Get out, Merritt said, the words emerging with a calm that surprised him. Merritt, we need to talk. Get out! The explosion of rage felt like something breaking loose inside him. Both of you, get the hell away from me. Sloane was crying openly now, her hands shaking as she clutched the robe tighter. Where will I go? My things, I don't care. Merritt's voice echoed in the hotel room. I don't care where you go. I don't care what happens to you. You destroyed us. You destroyed everything. You don't get to ask me for anything ever again. Dashiell moved toward his shirt and jacket, his movements careful, like someone trying not to spook a dangerous animal. Sir, I'm sorry. I know that means nothing, but— You're right, Merritt cut him off. It means nothing. Less than nothing. The man finished dressing in silence, then moved toward the door. Sloane stood frozen by the window. Tears streaming down her face, her lips moving but no sound coming out. She looked small suddenly, diminished. Nothing like the strong, confident woman Merritt had driven to the airport 3 days ago. Had that woman ever really existed? Or had he been married to a stranger all along? As Dashiell reached the doorway, he paused, glancing back at Sloane with an expression that told Merritt everything he needed to know about how deep this betrayal ran. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was something real, something that had taken root and grown in the secret spaces of his marriage. Sloane? Dashiell said softly, and she looked at him with such naked need that Merritt had to turn away. Go, she told him, her voice breaking. Just go. The door closed behind him, leaving Merritt alone with the woman who used to be his wife. She was still crying, still standing by the window like she was afraid to come closer. The Chicago skyline behind her continued to glitter indifferently. Millions of lights representing millions of lives, none of them as shattered as his. I never meant to hurt you, Sloane said, and even in his rage, Merritt could hear that she meant it. Somehow that made it worse. But you did, he said. You did hurt me. You're still hurting me. Every second you stand there is another second of hurt. I love you, Merritt. I do. I know you don't believe that now, but don't. He held up his hand, his whole body trembling. Don't you dare tell me you love me after what I just saw. Love doesn't do this. Love doesn't— He couldn't finish. The words were drowning in the anguish rising in his throat. Sloane took a tentative step toward him. Let me explain, please. It's not what you think. I mean, it is, but it's also— It's complicated. Complicated, Merritt repeated, the word tasting like poison. 23 years of marriage and you're going to tell me it's complicated? I'm trying to— A knock at the door interrupted her. They both froze. Another knock, more insistent this time. Room service, a voice called from the hallway. Neither of them had ordered room service. Merritt walked to the door, his movements mechanical, and opened it to find a hotel employee holding a silver tray with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Compliments of Mr. Thorne," the young man said cheerfully, then seemed to register the tension in the room. His smile faltered. Is this not a good time?" "Mr. Thorne," Merritt repeated slowly, looking at the champagne, at the 2 glasses, at the evidence of a celebration that was supposed to happen. "Dashiell Thorne?" The employee nodded, uncomfortable now, clearly wishing he'd never taken this shift. Merritt took the tray and tipped the man $50, his last act of normalcy before everything ahead became unknown territory. As the door closed, he set the tray on the dresser and stared at the champagne bottle. Dom Pérignon. The expensive kind. The kind you bought for someone special. "He sent you champagne," Merritt said, and started laughing. It was a horrible sound, jagged and broken, nothing like real laughter. "He sent my wife champagne to our hotel room, your hotel room, the one you've been sharing with him while I was home alone, missing you. Planning to surprise you because I love you so goddamn much." "Merritt, was tonight special?" he asked, turning to face her. "Is that why he sent champagne? Were you celebrating something? An anniversary, maybe? 6 months is an anniversary, right? Should I have brought champagne too? Should I have been celebrating the destruction of my marriage?" "Stop it," Sloane pleaded. "Please, just stop." But Merritt couldn't stop. 23 years of being the understanding one, the patient one, the one who always tried to see both sides, all of that was burning away, leaving only raw agony and rage. "Did you laugh with him the way you laugh with me?" The question came out quieter, more devastating than his shouts. "Did you tell him your secrets? Did you—" He swallowed hard. "Did you say you loved him?" Sloane's silence was its own answer. Merritt picked up the champagne bottle, feeling its weight in his hands. For one wild moment he considered smashing it, letting the destruction outside match what he felt inside. Instead, he set it back down gently, carefully, because even now, even broken, he couldn't bring himself to make a scene. "I want a divorce," he said, and watched his wife's face crumple. "No," she whispered. "No, Merritt, please. We can fix this. We can—" "Fix what?" he demanded. "How do you fix betrayal? How do you fix 6 months of lying? How do you fix the fact that I flew across the country to surprise the woman I love, only to find out she's been living a whole separate life? Tell me, Sloane, how exactly do we fix that?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. There were no words for this. No explanation that could make it make sense. Merritt walked toward the door, each step feeling like he was walking away from his entire life. "Where are you going?" Sloane asked, her voice small and frightened. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "Anywhere but here." "Merritt, wait, please. I know I don't deserve it, but just stay. Let me explain. Let me try to make you understand." He paused with his hand on the doorknob, not turning around. "Understand what, Sloane? That you fell in love with someone else? That our marriage wasn't enough for you? That I wasn't enough?" "It's not about you being enough," she said desperately. "You were always enough. You were everything. You still are." "Then why?" The question came out as a broken whisper. "If I was everything, why did you need him?" Sloane was silent for a long moment. And when she finally spoke, her words changed everything Merritt thought he knew about betrayal. "Because I'm dying, Merritt. I'm dying, and I couldn't bear to watch you watch me die. Dashiell he's my doctor. He's the oncologist who's been treating me for the past 6 months." Merritt's hand slipped from the doorknob as the floor seemed to tilt beneath him. He turned slowly to face his wife, seeing her clearly for the first time since he'd entered the room. The subtle weight loss he'd attributed to stress. The way she'd been more tired lately. The new medication he'd noticed in the bathroom that she'd said was for her thyroid. What? The word came out barely audible. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Sloane said, tears flowing freely now. I found out 6 months ago. The prognosis is, it's not good, Merritt. They gave me maybe a year, maybe less. The room spun. Merritt reached out blindly for something to hold on to, his hand finding the edge of the desk. You're lying. You're just saying this to... I'm not lying. She pulled her robe aside to reveal a port in her chest, a medical device for chemotherapy that he'd somehow never noticed. I've been getting treatment in Chicago. That's why I've had so many business trips lately. They weren't all business. Dashiell has been helping me with an experimental trial. Why? Merritt's voice cracked completely. Why didn't you tell me? Because I couldn't. Sloane's composure finally shattered completely. I couldn't watch your heart break. I couldn't watch you put your whole life on hold to take care of me. I couldn't watch our home turn into a hospice. I wanted... She sobbed, her whole body shaking. I wanted you to remember me healthy. I wanted you to remember us happy. I didn't want my death to be the thing that defined the end of our marriage. So you let me think you were cheating instead? Merritt couldn't process what he was hearing. His mind was trying to hold two incompatible truths at once, the image of his wife with another man and the revelation that she was dying. You let me believe God, Sloane, what you just put me through. I know, she whispered. I know it was cruel. I know it was selfish. But Merritt, I was trying to protect you. Dashiell and I, we're not... It's not what you think. We're not having an affair. He's been my doctor, my friend, my support through the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Tonight, he came to tell me the latest test results. The treatment isn't working. She moved toward him, slowly. Carefully, like approaching something wild and wounded. I was going to tell you soon. I swear I was. I just needed more time to figure out how. How do you tell the man you love more than anything that you're dying? How do you shatter someone's entire world? Merritt's legs gave out. He sank to the floor, his back against the wall, his mind unable to catch up with the rapid series of revelations. Betrayal, then cancer, then the realization that everything he thought he knew was wrong. I saw you looking at him, he said, staring at nothing. I saw the way you looked at him, Sloane. That wasn't the way you look at a doctor. She knelt in front of him, maintaining her distance but close enough that he could see every line of pain etched on her face. He saved my life once already, she said softly. 2 months into my diagnosis. I tried to kill myself. I couldn't face what was coming. Dashiell found me. He talked me down. He's been the person I could be honest with about my fear, about my rage at the universe for this timing. He let me be angry and terrified when I couldn't let myself be those things with you. Because you... Her voice broke. You would have tried to fix it, to make it better. And there is no fixing this, Merritt. I'm dying, and there's nothing anyone can do. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and final. I'm dying. I'm dying. I'm dying. When you knocked on the door, Sloane continued, we were looking at my test results, the whisper you heard. She paused, fresh tears falling. He was telling me I was incredible for staying so strong, for still trying to live my life fully, even knowing what's coming. That's what I asked him to say again, because I needed to hear it one more time before I lost my courage completely. Merritt looked up at his wife. Truly looked at her. He saw what he'd been too busy to notice before. The shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. The way her collarbone was more prominent than it should be. The tremor in her hands that had nothing to do with this moment, and everything to do with treatment side effects. "Show me," he said hoarsely. "Show me the proof, the diagnosis, all of it." Sloane nodded, standing on shaky legs and moving to her laptop. She pulled up medical records, test results, imaging scans that showed masses in her pancreas that had already metastasized to her liver. Each document was another confirmation of the nightmare unfolding before him. "The experimental treatment was my last hope," she explained, her voice mechanical now, like she'd retreated to some distant, professional part of herself to get through this. "Standard chemotherapy wasn't working. Dashiell got me into a trial. But these new results show..." She couldn't finish. "Show what?" Merritt demanded, needing to hear all of it, needing the complete truth after 6 months of lies. "Show that the cancer is progressing faster than they expected. The tumors are growing. I probably have 6 months left. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. The trial is over for me." 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months left with the woman he'd planned to grow old with. 6 to 8 months to say goodbye to 23 years of shared life, of morning coffee and inside jokes, and all the tiny moments that made up a marriage. Merritt stood. His movements stiff, his mind still struggling to integrate this new reality. He walked to where Sloane stood by the laptop, and did the only thing he could think of. He pulled her into his arms and held her while they both broke apart completely. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed against his chest. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I'm so sorry I made you think I was having an affair. I'm so sorry I'm dying and leaving you alone." "Shh," he whispered, even though his own tears were falling into her hair. "Stop. Just stop." They stood like that for what felt like hours, 2 people who'd been married for half their lives, holding each other through the worst revelation either of them had ever faced. Outside the window, Chicago continued its glittering indifference. Inside room 1847, everything had changed. When they finally pulled apart, Merritt had 1,000 questions, but only one mattered in this moment. "What do we do now?" he asked. Sloane wiped her eyes, her mascara smeared, her careful composure long since abandoned. "I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out for 6 months." "We do it together," Merritt said, the words coming out with more certainty than he felt. "Whatever time we have left, we do it together. No more secrets, no more protecting me from the truth. We face this together, or we don't face it at all." "Merritt." A sharp knock interrupted them again. Both of them tensed, but this time when Merritt opened the door, it wasn't room service. It was Dashiell Thorne, still wearing the shirt he'd hastily put on, his expression grave. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice professional despite the circumstances. "But Sloane, you need to see this. The hospital just called. There's been a development with your latest scan that..." He stopped abruptly, seeing their tear-stained faces, seeming to understand that the truth was finally out. "What kind of development?" Sloane asked, her hand finding Merritt's and gripping it tight. Dashiell's expression shifted into something Merritt couldn't quite read. Not good news, but not entirely bad either. "I think we should discuss this somewhere private. Both of you," he added, acknowledging Merritt's presence with a nod of respect. And just like that, the night took yet another turn, pulling them all toward a revelation that would make everything that came before it seem simple by comparison. The hotel's business center was empty at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. Dashiell had convinced the front desk to let them use the small conference room, away from prying eyes and curious hotel staff. The fluorescent lights were harsh after the soft lighting of the hotel room, making everyone look exhausted and older than they were. Merritt sat beside Sloane at the conference table, their hands still intertwined. Across from them, Dashiell opened his laptop and pulled up a series of medical images that looked like abstract art to Merritt's untrained eye, dark masses against lighter tissue, areas circled in red, annotations in medical terminology he couldn't decipher. "I need to apologize first," Dashel said, his eyes meeting Merritt's directly. "What you walked in on tonight, I should have insisted that Sloane tell you the truth months ago. As her physician, I knew the psychological toll this secrecy was taking on her. As someone who's witnessed her suffering, I should have advocated harder for honesty. I'm sorry." Merritt wanted to hate this man. Part of him still did, irrationally, for being the one Sloane had turned to instead of her own husband. But there was genuine remorse in Dashel's expression, and something else, too. A weariness that spoke of a doctor who'd watched too many patients slip away despite his best efforts. "Just tell us about the development," Merritt said, his voice rough from crying. "Please." Dashel nodded and turned the laptop so they could both see the screen better. "These are the scans we took yesterday. Standard protocol for monitoring tumor progression." He clicked to another image. "And this is the scan from 3 months ago, for comparison." Sloane leaned forward, studying the images with an intensity that suggested she'd become fluent in reading her own death sentence. "The masses are smaller," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the pancreas and the liver. They're smaller." "Significantly smaller," Dashel confirmed, and for the first time since Merritt had met him, there was something like hope in his voice. "When the lab called tonight, I thought there'd been a mistake. I had them run the analysis twice, but it's consistent. Somehow, against all statistical probability, the experimental treatment is working. Not just stabilizing the cancer, actually shrinking it." The words hung in the air. Too good to be true, too fragile to fully believe. Merritt looked at his wife, saw the war of emotions playing across her face. Hope warring with disbelief. Joy colliding with fear of disappointment. "But you said the treatment wasn't working," Merritt said, trying to understand. "Earlier, Sloane said the trial was over because the cancer was progressing." "That was based on preliminary blood work from 2 days ago," Dashel explained. "The tumor markers were elevated, which typically indicates progression. But the imaging tells a different story. Sometimes the markers spike during treatment as dying cancer cells release their contents into the bloodstream. We see it occasionally with immunotherapy approaches. The elevated markers might actually be a sign that the treatment is effectively killing the cancer cells." "So what does this mean?" Sloane asked, and Merritt heard something in her voice he hadn't heard in months. Actual hope. Dashel closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. "It means we continue the treatment. It means your prognosis just changed from terminal to uncertain, which, in oncology, is sometimes the best news we can offer. I can't promise you a cure, Sloane. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer is still one of the most aggressive forms we treat. But I can tell you that you're responding to treatment in a way that only about 3% of patients in this trial have shown. That's extraordinary." "How much time?" Merritt asked, the practical part of his brain demanding concrete information. "Before you said 6 to 8 months. Now what are we looking at?" "If this response continues, years, potentially. We've had patients in similar situations achieve 5-year remission, some even longer." Dashel held up a hand before their hope could fully take flight. "But I need to be clear. This is still a serious, life-threatening condition. There will be more treatment, more scans, more uncertainty. The cancer could develop resistance to the treatment. There are no guarantees." Years, the word echoed in Merritt's mind. 5 years, maybe more. 5 years of Sunday mornings and ordinary moments. 5 years to say the things that needed to be said, to create new memories, to have the time they'd thought was stolen from them. Sloane was crying again, but these were different tears. Relief, terror, disbelief, hope, all of it flowing out of her in great, shuddering sobs. Merritt pulled her close, his own tears falling silently. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked her again, but this time the question carried less anger and more profound sadness. "Sloane, we could have faced this together from the beginning." She pulled back to look at him, her makeup completely ruined now, her carefully constructed professional image destroyed. "Because I was a coward," she said simply. "Because the moment I told you would be the moment everything changed. I wanted to protect you from that change for as long as possible. I wanted to protect myself from seeing the fear in your eyes. I wanted to pretend that if I didn't tell you, maybe it wasn't real." "But it was real," Merritt said. "It is real. And you faced it alone when you didn't have to." "Not entirely alone," Dashiell interjected quietly. "I hope you understand, Mr. Holloway, that my relationship with your wife has been strictly professional, with one exception. I've also tried to be her friend through this. She needed someone who understood the medical reality without the emotional devastation that comes from loving someone who's dying. That's not an excuse, just an explanation." Merritt looked at this stranger who'd been supporting his wife through the worst crisis of her life. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. "For keeping her alive, for giving her hope when she couldn't find it herself." Dashiell nodded, accepting the gratitude with quiet dignity. "I'll leave you two alone now. Sloane, I'll need you back in Chicago next week for another scan and to adjust your treatment protocol. This time I hope you'll bring your husband." "I will," Sloane promised. After Dashiell left, Merritt and Sloane sat in the harsh fluorescent light of the conference room, holding each other like survivors of a shipwreck finally reaching shore. The hotel's heating system hummed softly. Somewhere down the hall, a cleaning cart rattled past. Life continued its mundane rhythm while their entire world had been unmade and remade in the span of 2 hours. "I don't know how to forgive you," Merritt said finally. "For the lying, for the secrecy, for making me think you were having an affair. Part of me understands why you did it, but another part of me is so angry I can barely breathe." "I know," Sloane said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But I also don't know how to lose you," he continued. "And tonight I thought I was losing you to another man. Then I thought I was losing you to cancer in 6 months. And now we might have years. And I don't know how to process any of it. My brain can't keep up with my heart." Sloane took his face in her hands, making him look at her. "Then don't process it. Not tonight. Tonight, let's just be here. Let's just be us. Whatever that means now." They returned to her hotel room, the scene of the earlier devastation that now felt like it had happened in another lifetime. The champagne bottle still sat on the dresser, an artifact from a different crisis. The white orchids Merritt had dropped were still scattered across the hallway outside. He picked them up, their petals slightly crushed but still beautiful. Still carrying all the meaning they'd always held. Inside the room, Sloane changed out of the robe and into comfortable clothes, sweatpants and one of Merritt's old college shirts that she'd stolen years ago. He noticed how it hung looser on her than it should, physical evidence of the battle she'd been fighting in secret. They lay together on the bed, not sleeping, just existing in the strange space between crisis and hope. "Tell me everything," Merritt said. "Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." So she did. She told him about the abdominal pain she'd been ignoring for months, attributing it to stress and age, about finally seeing a doctor who'd ordered tests, about the phone call that came on a Tuesday afternoon while she was at work, asking her to come in immediately to discuss the results, about sitting in an oncologist's office, Dashiell's office, and hearing the words stage 4, metastatic, aggressive. "I threw up in his office," she said with a bitter laugh. "Right there in the trash can next to his desk, very dignified." She told him about the days after the diagnosis, moving through their home like a ghost, cooking dinner and making conversation while her mind screamed that she was dying. About lying next to him at night, watching him sleep, memorizing the sound of his breathing because she thought she only had months to commit it to memory. The worst part wasn't the fear of dying, she said. It was the fear of what it would do to you. I kept imagining telling you, seeing your face break, watching our home turn into a place of sickness instead of love. I couldn't bear it. So you lied, Merritt said, not accusingly, just stating fact. So I lied. I told you I had more business trips. I started the treatment in Chicago because none of our friends or family would see me there. I wore scarves and hats when my hair started thinning from the chemo. I told you I was trying a new style. She laughed hollowly. You said it looked good. It did, Merritt said softly. You always look good to me. She told him about the treatment, the nausea, the exhaustion, the port in her chest that she hid with high-necked blouses. About Dashiell, who'd gone above and beyond to accommodate her secrecy, scheduling appointments during her business trips, never questioning her choice even when he disagreed with it. He told me once that I was robbing you of the chance to support me, Sloane said. That love deserved honesty even when honesty was devastating. I told him he didn't understand. How could he? He's never been married. Is that why he sent champagne? Merritt asked. Because the relationship was more than professional? No, Sloane said firmly. He sent champagne because he thought we'd be celebrating good news together. He knew how much I needed something to celebrate, some small victory in all this horror. And when the blood work came back bad, he came here to tell me in person instead of over the phone because he didn't want me to be alone when I heard it. That's who he is. A good doctor and a good person who cares about his patients. Merritt absorbed this, trying to reconcile his initial impression with this new understanding. But you looked at him with love, he said. I saw it, Sloane. That wasn't just gratitude or friendship. She was quiet for a long time before answering. Maybe I did love him, in a way. Not romantically. But he was the only person I could be completely honest with about my fear, my rage, my grief. He held space for all of it without trying to fix it or make it better. That creates a kind of intimacy that's difficult to describe. It doesn't replace what we have, Merritt. It's something different entirely. And what do we have? Merritt asked. After 6 months of lies, what's left? Everything that matters, Sloane said. 23 years don't disappear because I made terrible choices in a crisis. Our history, our love, our life together, it's all still there. But I understand if you can't forgive me. I understand if this broke something that can't be fixed. Merritt thought about forgiveness, about trust, about the complexity of loving someone who'd hurt him while trying to protect him. I don't know if we can go back to what we were, he said honestly. But maybe we can become something new, something forged by this. They talked through the night, Merritt asking questions and Sloane answering with the kind of raw honesty she should have offered 6 months ago. They talked about treatment plans and prognoses, about hope and fear, about the future that had seemed lost and might now be possible again. As dawn broke over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Sloane fell asleep in Merritt's arms, exhausted by confession and crying, and the emotional whiplash of the night's revelations. He held her, watching her breathe, seeing the port in her chest that spoke of her secret battle, the thinness of her wrists that testified to her suffering. His phone buzzed with a text from their neighbor, Vivian. Hope you're having a wonderful surprise reunion with Sloane. The plants are fine. Don't worry about rushing back. A wonderful surprise reunion. If only she knew. Merritt carefully extracted himself from Sloane's sleeping form and stepped out onto the small balcony attached to the room. The Chicago morning was crisp, the city below already alive with traffic and purpose. He thought about all the lives happening down there, all the private dramas and joys unfolding behind closed doors. How many of those people were facing their own versions of this? How many marriages were being tested by crisis? His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Vivian. It was an unknown Chicago number. Merritt answered, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Sloane. "Mr. Holloway?" It was Dashiell's voice. "I apologize for calling so early, but something's come up that you and Sloane need to know about immediately." Merritt's stomach dropped. "Is it the cancer? Did you find something else?" "No, it's not medical, it's—" Dashiell paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "It's about the experimental treatment Sloane has been receiving. There's been a development with the pharmaceutical company sponsoring the trial, a legal development. Can you and Sloane meet me at the hospital in an hour? I'd rather explain this in person." "What kind of legal development?" Merritt demanded, but Dashiell had already hung up. He stood on the balcony, watching the sun climb higher over Chicago, and felt the first stirrings of a new kind of dread. They'd survived the night's revelations. They'd been given hope where there'd been none. But something in Dashiell's voice suggested that their trials were far from over. Merritt went back inside and gently woke Sloane. "We need to go to the hospital," he told her. Dashiell called. "There's something about the treatment trial he needs to discuss." Sloane sat up immediately, the fear returning to her eyes. "Did he say what?" "Just that it's legal, not medical, and that we need to get there as soon as possible." They dressed quickly, moving with the efficiency of people who'd shared a morning routine for decades. But everything felt different now. Changed. Every simple gesture, Sloane brushing her teeth, Merritt tying his shoes, carried the weight of their new reality. The hospital was only 15 minutes from the hotel. They rode in silence, both lost in their own thoughts, both bracing for whatever new revelation awaited them. The medical center was massive, a complex of modern buildings devoted to fighting death with science and determination. Dashiell met them in the lobby, looking like he hadn't slept. "Thank you for coming so quickly," he said, leading them not to his office but to a conference room where two other people were already waiting. One was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression of barely contained fury. The other was a younger man in an expensive suit, clearly a lawyer by the briefcase and the legal pad in front of him. "Sloane, Merritt, this is Dr. Verity Kensington, the principal investigator for the experimental treatment trial," Dashiell said. "And this is Lawrence Chen, legal counsel for Hadrian Pharmaceuticals, the company sponsoring the trial." Dr. Kensington stood, extending her hand first to Sloane. "Mrs. Holloway, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "What's going on?" Sloane asked, bypassing pleasantries. "Dashiell said there's a legal issue with the treatment?" Lawrence Chen cleared his throat, opening a folder and pulling out several documents. "Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Holloway, I'm afraid I have difficult news. Hadrian Pharmaceuticals has been forced to suspend the experimental treatment trial, effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. Sloane grabbed Merritt's hand, her grip painfully tight. "Suspend it?" Merritt repeated. "But she's responding to the treatment. You said she's one of the 3% showing improvement." "That's precisely the problem," Dr. Kensington said, her voice bitter. "The trial was designed to test whether the treatment could stabilize advanced pancreatic cancer. No one expected it to actually shrink tumors. When we reported the positive outcomes, including Sloane's remarkable response, the FDA demanded additional safety protocols. Hadrian Pharmaceuticals has decided that implementing those protocols is too expensive, too time-consuming. They're cutting their losses and shutting down the trial." "Cutting their losses?" Sloane's voice was barely controlled. "People's lives are not losses to be cut." "I completely agree," Dr. Kensington said, "which is why I resigned from Hadrian this morning. This is unconscionable." Lawrence Chen shifted uncomfortably. The company's position is that without clear FDA approval pathways, continuing the trial exposes them to significant liability. I want to be clear. I personally find this decision reprehensible. I'm here because I'm legally obligated to deliver this notification, not because I support it. So what happens now? Merritt asked, though he could already see the answer in everyone's faces. Sloan just stops treatment? After we just found out it's working? Unless we can find another way to access the medication, yes, Daschle said. The drug is proprietary to Hadrian. It's not approved for use outside the trial. Without the trial, Sloan has no legal way to continue receiving it. Sloan stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. You're telling me that there's a treatment that could save my life, but I can't have it because a pharmaceutical company decided it's not profitable enough? It's more complicated than that, Lawrence began. No, Sloan interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. It's exactly that simple. You have a drug that works. I need that drug. Everything else is just corporate doublespeak and legal cowardice. Dr. Kensington moved around the table to stand beside Sloan. We're not giving up, she said firmly. There are other options. Compassionate use provisions. Emergency FDA authorization. I didn't resign from Hadrian just to deliver bad news. I resigned so I could fight this without conflict of interest. How long will those options take? Merritt asked. Days? Weeks? Months, Lawrence admitted. Maybe longer. The FDA approval process isn't fast even under the best circumstances. Sloan doesn't have months to wait, Daschle said. The cancer doesn't pause while we navigate bureaucracy. Every week without treatment is a week the tumors could start growing again. Sloan sank back into her chair, all the fight draining out of her. Just hours ago, they'd been celebrating hope. Now that hope was being snatched away by paperwork and corporate decisions made by people who would never have to face the consequences. There has to be something, Merritt said desperately. Some way to keep her on the medication. Dr. Kensington and Daschle exchanged a look that Merritt couldn't quite interpret. There might be, Dr. Kensington said slowly, but it would require doing something that's technically legal, but definitely ethically gray. And it would require all of us being willing to take significant risks. What kind of risks? Sloan asked. Before Dr. Kensington could answer, Lawrence Chen stood, gathering his documents. I think this is where I need to leave, he said. Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Holloway, I'm truly sorry. And whatever Dr. Kensington is about to propose, I didn't hear it. He left the room quickly, closing the door firmly behind him. Dr. Kensington waited until his footsteps faded before continuing. Before Hadrian suspended the trial, we received a shipment of the medication, enough to treat 6 patients for 3 months. That medication is supposed to be returned to the company for disposal. Supposed to be, Daschle repeated, understanding dawning in his eyes. Supposed to be, Dr. Kensington confirmed. But shipments have been lost before. Paperwork gets mixed up. Things fall through cracks. If someone were to, hypothetically, divert a portion of that medication before it's returned, and if a doctor were willing to administer it off-book, and if a patient were willing to receive treatment that's not officially sanctioned. You could keep treating me, Sloan finished. For 3 months, Dr. Kensington said, which gives us 3 months to fight for compassionate use approval, to petition the FDA, to make enough noise that Hadrian reconsiders or another company steps in. It's not a permanent solution, but it's a bridge. What are the risks? Merritt asked. To all of you? For me, I could lose my medical license, Daschle said bluntly. Administering non-approved medication outside a sanctioned trial violates about a dozen regulations. For me, I could face criminal charges for theft of pharmaceutical property, Dr. Kensington added, though I'd argue it's not theft if I'm preserving medication that was going to be destroyed anyway. And for me? Sloan asked. You'd have no legal recourse if something goes wrong, Daschle explained. No insurance coverage for side effects, no regulatory protection. You'd be entirely on your own if there are complications." Sloane looked at Merritt, and he saw everything in her eyes. The fear, the hope, the desperate need to keep fighting. "What do you think?" she asked him. Merritt thought about rules and regulations, about the letter of the law versus its spirit. He thought about pharmaceutical companies putting profits over patients, about bureaucratic processes that moved too slowly for the dying. He thought about his wife, who'd been given a glimmer of hope only to have it threatened by paperwork and corporate decisions. "I think," he said slowly, "that if there's a chance to save your life, we take it. Legal or illegal, sanctioned or not. We take it." Sloane turned to Dr. Kensington and Dashiell. "Then let's do it, all of it, whatever it takes." Dr. Kensington nodded grimly. "I'll need to move the medication tonight, before the retrieval team arrives tomorrow morning. Dashiell, can you arrange for Sloane to receive her next treatment here, off the books?" "I'll make it work," Dashiell promised. They spent the next hour planning logistics, schedules, cover stories. Merritt listened to them discuss dosages and treatment protocols, his mind still reeling from how quickly their lives had become a medical thriller. 24 hours ago, his biggest worry was whether to make mushroom risotto or chicken piccata for Sloane's homecoming dinner. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Dr. Kensington pulled Sloane aside. "I need you to understand something," she said quietly. "What we're doing is risky for everyone involved, but particularly for you. If anything goes wrong, if the medication causes unforeseen complications, you won't have the protections you'd have in an official trial." "I understand," Sloane said, "and I accept the risk." "Good. Because there's one more thing." Dr. Kensington's expression turned grave. "The medication we diverted? It's not just for you. There are 2 other patients in the trial showing similar positive responses. They'll need to be included in this plan. Can you live with that? Knowing that your 3-month bridge is actually a 1-month bridge because the medication has to be shared?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. More people meant more risk of exposure. More people meant less medication for Sloane. More people meant more potential consequences if they were caught. But it also meant 2 other families getting the same hope, the same fighting chance. Sloane didn't hesitate. "Include them," she said. "We're all in this together." Merritt loved her so much in that moment it hurt. They left the hospital as the afternoon sun began to slant through Chicago's towers, casting long shadows across the parking lot. In the car, neither of them spoke for several minutes, both processing the morning's whiplash from hope to despair to defiant determination. "We just became criminals," Sloane said finally, and laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that spoke of someone who'd been pushed past their breaking point and found something like freedom on the other side. "Technically, we're accomplices to pharmaceutical theft and illegal medical treatment," Merritt corrected, and found himself laughing too. They drove back towards the hotel, but as they passed through downtown Chicago, Merritt made an impulsive turn. "Where are we going?" Sloane asked. "You'll see." He drove them to the lakefront, to a small park where they could see Lake Michigan stretching out like an ocean, wind whipping the water into whitecaps. They got out of the car and walked to a bench overlooking the water, sitting close together against the October chill. "I'm scared," Sloane admitted, "of the cancer, of the treatment, of what we just agreed to do. I'm terrified." "Me too," Merritt said, "but I'd rather be terrified together than safe and apart." They sat watching the lake, watching other people's lives unfold around them. Joggers and dog walkers and tourists taking photos. Normal people having normal days, unaware of the small group of medical professionals and patients who'd just decided to break the law in the name of preserving life. Merritt's phone buzzed. A text from Dashiell. "Dr. K says the package is secure. First treatment scheduled for Monday. Don't come to the hospital. Too risky. I'll text you an address. Sloane read the message over his shoulder. This is really happening, she said. We're really doing this. Yes, Merritt confirmed. We really are. They stayed by the lake until the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Then they drove back to the hotel, both of them exhausted but somehow more connected than they'd been in months. The lies were over. The truth, terrifying as it was, had brought them back together. In the hotel room, they ordered room service, simple comfort food that neither of them could fully taste but ate anyway. They turned on a movie neither of them watched. They lay in bed holding each other, not talking, just existing in this strange new reality they'd stumbled into. Merritt was almost asleep when Sloane's phone rang. She answered it, her voice thick with drowsiness. Hello? Then she sat bolt upright, her face going pale. What? When? Are you certain? Merritt turned on the bedside lamp, seeing panic in his wife's eyes. We'll be right there, Sloane said, and ended the call with shaking hands. What is it? Merritt demanded. What's wrong? That was hospital security, Sloane said, her voice hollow. Dr. Kensington never made it home tonight. Her car was found in the hospital parking garage with the driver's side door open and the engine running. She's missing, and so is the medication. The hospital parking garage was cordoned off with yellow tape, police cruisers blocking the entrance, their lights painting the concrete walls in alternating blue and red. Merritt and Sloane stood behind the barrier with Dashiell, watching investigators photograph Dr. Kensington's abandoned vehicle, a silver sedan with its door hanging open like a broken wing. Tell me again exactly what she said to you, the detective addressing Dashiell said, his notepad already filled with scribbled notes. Detective Rourke was in his 50s, with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. She texted me at 7:43, Dashiell said, showing his phone. Said she'd secured the package and was heading home. That's the last communication I had with her. And this package, Detective Rourke said carefully. Hospital security mentioned it might be pharmaceutical materials. Can you elaborate? Dashiell, Merritt, and Sloane exchanged glances. They'd agreed on the drive over to be as truthful as possible without incriminating anyone. Dr. Kensington was working on securing medication for a suspended clinical trial, Dashiell said. It's complicated. Everything in medicine is complicated, Rourke said dryly. But I need simple answers. Was this medication valuable? Potentially very valuable, Dashiell admitted. The pharmaceutical company that manufactured it invested millions in development. If someone knew what she was carrying, he didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the implication. Dr. Kensington hadn't just vanished. She'd been taken, and whoever took her wanted the medication badly enough to commit kidnapping. Sloane swayed slightly, and Merritt caught her elbow. She was trying to help me, Sloane said, her voice breaking. This is my fault. If I'd just accepted the trial suspension, if I hadn't asked for her help. Stop, Dashiell said firmly. Dr. Kensington made her own choice. She knew the risks. Did she know the risk included being abducted from a hospital parking garage? Sloane shot back. Detective Rourke's radio crackled, and he stepped away to respond. When he returned, his expression had shifted from weary to intensely focused. We just got something from the garage security footage. There's a van that pulled up next to Dr. Kensington's car at approximately 7:55. Two individuals in medical scrubs approached her vehicle. The footage shows a brief struggle before they put her in the van and drove off. Medical scrubs? Dashiell repeated. So they wanted to blend in at the hospital. That's our assumption. We're running the van's plates now. Rourke studied the three of them carefully. I'm going to ask you this directly, and I need honest answers. Is there any reason someone from Hadrian Pharmaceuticals would want to prevent that medication from being distributed? The question landed like a grenade. You think the pharmaceutical company kidnapped her? Merritt asked, incredulous. I think a company that just canceled a trial over cost concerns might be motivated to ensure their proprietary medication doesn't end up circulating without their control, Rourke said. Corporate espionage and theft protection in the pharmaceutical industry can get aggressive. I've seen it before. Sloane's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and her face went white. It's from Dr. Kensington's number. She held it up so they could all see. A text message with no words, just a photograph. Dr. Kensington, sitting in what appeared to be an office, looking disheveled but unharmed. Behind her, clearly visible, was a Hadrian Pharmaceuticals logo on the wall. Another text came through immediately after. Mrs. Holloway, this is corporate security for Hadrian Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Kensington is safe and unharmed. We need to discuss the stolen medication. Come to the address below. Alone. You have 1 hour. The address was for a building in Chicago's financial district, Hadrian's regional headquarters. That's a kidnapping demand, Rourke said, already pulling out his own phone. You're not going anywhere near that location, Mrs. Holloway. We'll handle this. If you send police, they'll destroy the medication, Sloane said urgently. That medication is the only thing keeping me alive. I have to go. Absolutely not, Merritt said. Sloane, they kidnapped a woman from a hospital parking garage. You think they won't hurt you? They won't hurt me. I'm too valuable as leverage, Sloane said, her mind clearly racing. They want the medication back. They want to ensure we can't use it or expose what they did. This is corporate damage control, not violence. You don't know that, Daschle argued, but Sloane was already texting back. I'll come. Don't hurt Dr. Kensington. The response was immediate. 58 minutes. Mrs. Holloway, I strongly advise against this, Detective Rourke said. Let us handle the negotiation. With all due respect, Detective, you don't have what they want, Sloane said. She turned to Merritt, taking both his hands in hers. I have to do this. You know I do. Then I'm coming with you. They said alone. I don't care what they said. Sloane cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me. If this goes wrong, if something happens to me, you need to be free to tell this story. You need to be able to expose what Hadrian did, kidnapping a doctor, threatening patients. You can't do that if you're compromised too. I don't give a damn about exposing them if it means losing you, Merritt said fiercely. But I give a damn, Sloane said. This isn't just about me anymore. There are 2 other patients who need that medication. There are thousands of future patients who might benefit from this research if it's not buried by corporate interests. Someone has to be free to fight for them. Merritt wanted to argue, to insist, to simply refuse to let her walk into danger alone. But he saw the determination in her eyes, the same determination that had gotten her through 6 months of secret treatment, through telling him the truth, through fighting for every extra day of life she could claim. I'm putting a wire on you, Detective Rourke said, clearly recognizing a losing battle when he saw one. And I'm having units positioned around the building. You're not going in there without backup, even if it has to be covert. 20 minutes later, Sloane sat in an unmarked police van while a technician fitted her with a nearly invisible audio transmitter. Merritt held her hand, his grip tight enough to hurt, neither of them caring. Promise me you'll be careful, he said. Promise me you won't do anything stupid if this goes wrong, she countered. I can't promise that. She smiled, a sad, tender expression that reminded him of their wedding day, of the vows they'd made to each other, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. I love you, Merritt Holloway. I should have trusted you with the truth from the beginning. I'm sorry it took a crisis to make me see that. I love you too, he said. And when you come back, when, not if, we're going to have a very long conversation about making decisions together instead of trying to protect each other from hard truths. Deal. The Hadrian Pharmaceuticals building was sleek glass and steel. the kind of corporate architecture designed to project power and success. Sloane entered through the main lobby, where a security guard was clearly expecting her. He didn't speak, just gestured toward an elevator already held open. Back in the police van, Merritt listened to the wire transmission, Dashiell beside him, both of them rigid with tension. Detective Rourke sat at the monitoring equipment, coordinating with his team positioned around the building. They heard the elevator chime, heard Sloane's breathing, heard her footsteps on what sounded like marble floors. "Mrs. Holloway, thank you for coming." A man's voice, smooth and professional. "I'm Gregory Thatcher, Vice President of Legal Affairs for Hadrian Pharmaceuticals. Please, have a seat." "Where's Dr. Kensington?" Sloane's voice was steady, stronger than Merritt felt. "She's in the next room, perfectly safe. We'll bring her out momentarily. First, we need to clarify the situation." "You mean the situation where your company kidnapped a respected physician?" Sloane said. "We prefer to think of it as protective custody," Thatcher said, unruffled. "Dr. Kensington was in possession of stolen property, medication that belongs to Hadrian Pharmaceuticals. We simply recovered our assets and ensured she didn't compound her theft with distribution. That medication was going to be destroyed anyway. She was saving lives, not stealing. That's a matter of perspective. From our perspective, she stole proprietary materials worth millions in development costs. But we're not here to debate ethics, Mrs. Holloway. We're here to make a deal." In the van, Merritt's hands clenched into fists. "I don't like where this is going." "Give her a chance," Dashiell said quietly. "Sloane's tougher than she looks." "Here's what we're proposing," Thatcher continued. "You sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the trial, its suspension, and tonight's events. In exchange, we'll return the medication to the hospital for proper disposal, release Dr. Kensington without pressing charges, and—" He paused. "We'll enroll you in a new trial, a private one, funded directly by our CEO, who happens to be personally invested in pancreatic cancer research after losing his sister to the disease last year." Silence on the wire. Merritt could almost hear Sloane's mind working, analyzing the offer for traps and loopholes. "Why would you do that?" she finally asked. "Why offer me treatment after going to such lengths to shut down the trial?" "Because the public trial was becoming a regulatory nightmare. Too much scrutiny, too many demands for expanded protocols we can't afford to implement across a broad study. But a private trial, with carefully selected participants, allows us to continue the research without the regulatory burden. You get treatment, we get data, everyone wins." "Except the hundreds of other patients who could benefit from this medication," Sloane said. "Medical research is expensive, Mrs. Holloway. We can't save everyone, but we can save you. Isn't that what matters?" Another pause. Merritt knew what Sloane was thinking. The same thing he would be thinking. Accept the deal, get the treatment, live to fight another day. Or refuse on principle and die for the sake of people she'd never meet. What about the other two patients showing positive responses in the original trial? Sloane asked. They can be included in the private trial as well. We're not monsters, Mrs. Holloway. We're business people trying to navigate an impossible regulatory landscape while also trying to cure cancer. And Dr. Kensington? Released immediately upon your signature on the NDA. No charges, no consequences, provided she also agrees to confidentiality. I need to see her first. I need to know she's really okay. Footsteps. A door opening. Then a voice Merritt recognized. Dr. Kensington, sounding tired but unharmed. Sloane, I'm fine. They've treated me well, all things considered. But don't agree to anything on my account. Dr. Poya, Kensington believes in ideals over pragmatism, Thatcher said. A noble position when it's not your life on the line. What happens if I refuse? Sloane asked. We press charges against Dr. Kensington for theft. We file civil suits against you, Dr. Holloway, and anyone else involved in the theft conspiracy. We use our considerable legal resources to ensure you spend whatever time you have left fighting in court instead of fighting cancer. and we make certain that no other pharmaceutical company will touch pancreatic cancer research for the next decade. Too risky, too contentious, too much potential for this kind of mess. Your refusal won't just hurt you. It'll hurt every future patient who might have benefited from this research. It was a masterful threat. Comprehensive, brutal, and probably true. Hadrian had the money and lawyers to make good on every word. In the van, Merritt felt sick. They've backed her into a corner. She could still refuse, Daschle said, but he didn't sound convinced. Mrs. Holloway, Thatcher said, I need your answer. The offer expires in 5 minutes. Merritt heard his wife take a deep breath, heard the slight tremor she was trying to hide. I want to confer with my husband first. That wasn't part of... I don't care what was part of your terms, Sloane interrupted, her voice sharp. You want me to sign away my right to speak about medical malpractice and corporate malfeasance. The least you can do is give me 5 minutes to discuss it with the man I love. Unless you'd prefer I refuse right now? A pause. 5 minutes. There's a phone in the conference room. I'll step out. More footsteps. A door closing. Then Sloane's voice, barely above a whisper. Merritt, I know you're listening. I need you to tell me what to do. Detective Rourke handed Merritt a phone connected to Sloane's location. Make it quick. They might be monitoring. Merritt pressed the phone to his ear, his heart racing. Sloane. I don't know if I can do this, she said, and he could hear tears in her voice. Sign away the truth, let them win, become complicit in their cover-up. But if I don't, I die, and Dr. Kensington goes to prison, and nothing changes anyway except more suffering. What do you want to do? Merritt asked, even though he already knew his own answer. Anything that kept her alive. I want to fight them. I want to expose what they did, hold them accountable, force them to make this treatment available to everyone who needs it. I want to be brave. You are brave, Merritt said. The bravest person I know. But bravery doesn't mean martyrdom. Doesn't it? Isn't that what makes a difference? People willing to sacrifice for principles? Sometimes, Merritt admitted. But Sloane, I need you to hear this. I need you to live. Not for some abstract principle or future patients you'll never meet. I need you to live selfishly, for us, for the years we might still have together. I need you to sign their damn paper and take their damn treatment and come home to me. He heard her crying quietly on the other end. What about the other patients? What about them? Merritt said, and he knew he sounded harsh, knew he was asking her to make an impossible choice. I'm sorry, but I'm not noble enough to tell you to die for strangers. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe it makes me selfish, but I choose you, Sloane. I will always choose you. Even if it means being complicit in something wrong? Even then, we'll find another way to fight them. We'll take the treatment, get you healthy, and then we'll expose them from a position of strength instead of desperation. But right now, at this moment, I'm asking you to choose life. Choose us. Silence. Then, Okay, I'll sign. Thank God, Merritt breathed. But Merritt, after this, no more secrets between us. No more trying to protect each other from hard truths. Whatever comes, we face it together. Promise me. I promise. Now go sign their paper and come back to me. The next 20 minutes were agonizing. Merritt listened as Sloane negotiated minor changes to the NDA, allowing her to discuss her condition with family and medical professionals, protecting Daschle from any legal consequences. He listened as Dr. Kensington also signed, her voice heavy with reluctant compromise. Finally, he heard Thatcher say, Excellent, Dr. Kensington, you're free to go. Mrs. Holloway, someone from our medical team will contact you tomorrow with details about the private trial. Welcome aboard. Sloane emerged from the Hadrian building 45 minutes after entering, looking exhausted but intact. Merritt pulled her into his arms the moment she reached the van, holding her so tightly she gasped. "I'm okay," she murmured against his chest. "We're okay." Dr. Kensington appeared moments later, escorted by another security guard who handed her car keys back to her, without a word. She walked straight to where Sloane and Merritt stood. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I failed you." "You tried to help me," Sloane said. "You risked everything. How is that failure?" "Because I let them win. I let corporate interests triumph over patient care." "You let me live," Sloane corrected. "That's not nothing." Detective Rourke approached, his expression grim. "I assume you're not pressing charges?" "The NDA prevents it," Sloane said. "Convenient. For them." Rourke shook his head. "I've been doing this job for 23 years, and I'm still amazed by what people with money can get away with." As they drove back to the hotel, in the early hours of the morning, Sloane leaned against Merritt's shoulder, both of them too drained for conversation. Chicago's streets were nearly empty at 3 a.m., the city sleeping while they processed the night's surreal events. "Do you think I made the right choice?" Sloane asked quietly. "I think you made the only choice you could live with," Merritt said, "literally and figuratively. I keep thinking about all the patients who won't get this treatment, who'll die while Hadrian sits on research that could save them." "We'll find a way to change that," Merritt said, "but later when you're stronger. When we're stronger." Back at the hotel, they finally collapsed into bed as dawn was breaking for the second morning in a row. But this time, instead of crisis and revelation, they found something close to peace. Not happiness. Too much had happened for that. But a kind of exhausted relief. Merritt woke hours later to find Sloane sitting by the window, watching the city below. He joined her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what you said, about facing things together instead of trying to protect each other. And I realize I've been doing it wrong our entire marriage. Whenever something hard happened, I tried to shield you from it. Your business failure. I told you it was fine when I was terrified we'd lose the house. My father's death. I cried alone in the shower so you wouldn't see how broken I was. The infertility diagnosis. I pretended it didn't devastate me because I didn't want you to feel guilty. And the cancer, that was just the culmination of a lifetime of trying to carry burdens alone." "I did the same thing," Merritt admitted. "When my business failed, I didn't tell you how ashamed I felt, how much I questioned my worth. When we couldn't have children, I didn't tell you I sometimes wondered if you regretted marrying me. We've both been protecting each other from truths we should have shared." "So what do we do differently?" Sloane asked. "We start telling the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Sloane turned to face him fully, taking his hands in hers. "Then here's my truth. I'm terrified of dying. I'm terrified of leaving you alone. I'm terrified that the treatment won't work, or that it'll work for a while and then stop working, and I'll have to go through this hope and devastation cycle over and over. I'm terrified that our last months together will be consumed by hospitals and sickness instead of joy. I'm just so scared." "Here's my truth," Merritt said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm terrified too, of all of that. But I'm also grateful that we have time I thought we'd lost, grateful that you finally trusted me with the truth, grateful for every single day we get, whether it's in a hospital or in our kitchen or anywhere else. And I'm angry, so angry at Hadrian, at the universe, at cancer itself for trying to take you away from me." They held each other, sharing their fears and their hopes, practicing this new honesty they'd committed to. The Chicago morning unfolded around them, car horns and distant sirens and the eternal rhythm of a city that didn't care about their private drama. Sloane's phone buzzed with a message from Hadrian's medical coordinator. The first treatment session in the private trial was scheduled for the following Monday. Instructions were attached: where to go, what to bring, what to expect. "This is really happening," Sloane said, reading through the details. "I'm going to keep fighting." We're going to keep fighting, Merritt corrected. Together. They flew back to Seattle that afternoon, leaving Chicago behind with its skyscrapers and its secrets. During the flight, they held hands like teenagers, neither of them willing to let go. They talked about logistics. Sloane would need to fly to Chicago every 3 weeks for treatment. Merritt would come with her every time. They'd need to tell their families about the cancer, no more hiding. They'd need to find a local oncologist to monitor her between treatments. But they also talked about dreams, things they wanted to do with whatever time they had. A trip to Paris they'd always postponed. Learning to paint together. Maybe getting a dog. Small. Ordinary dreams made precious by their newfound fragility. When they arrived home, their house in Bellingham felt different. Still familiar, still theirs, but somehow transformed by everything they'd learned about each other and themselves. Merritt made the mushroom risotto he'd promised, and they ate it at their kitchen table, savoring the simple domesticity of it. "You know what's strange?" Sloane said, twirling risotto on her fork. "I feel more married to you now than I did 3 days ago, like we've been playing at being married for 23 years, and now we're finally doing it for real." "I know exactly what you mean," Merritt said. "It's like all our defenses are down. No more pretending everything's fine when it's not. No more hiding our fears to protect each other." That night, they lay in their own bed for the first time since Sloane's diagnosis revelation. The same bed they'd shared for 2 decades, but they were different people now. Scarred by crisis, bound by honesty, fragile but somehow stronger. "I don't know what happens next," Sloane said into the darkness. "The treatment might work, or it might not. We might have years, or we might have months. There's so much uncertainty." "Then we live in the uncertainty," Merritt said. "We don't wait for guarantees or perfect endings. We just live, messily, honestly, gratefully. We take each day and make it matter." "Promise me something," Sloane said. "Anything. Promise me that if the worst happens, if the cancer wins, you'll keep living. Really living, not just going through motions. Promise me you'll find joy again, even without me." Merritt's throat tightened. "Sloane, promise me, Merritt. I need to know you'll be okay." "I promise," he said, even though the words felt like ash in his mouth. "But you have to promise me something too. Promise me you'll fight like hell. Promise me you won't give up, even when it gets hard." "I promise." They fell asleep, holding each other. 2 imperfect people who'd stumbled through crisis into a deeper, truer version of the love they'd always shared. Outside their window, stars wheeled across the October sky, indifferent to human suffering and human hope, eternal witnesses to lives lived in the spaces between certainty and chaos. Over the following weeks, they built a new rhythm. Sloane started treatment in Chicago's private trial, with Merritt beside her for every session. The medication continued to work its improbable magic. Scans showed the tumors shrinking further, blood work improving. Dr. Daschle, now serving as her primary physician in the private trial, allowed himself cautious optimism. They told their families, enduring the tears and the questions and the fierce, protective love that came with revelation. Sloane's mother flew in from Portland and cooked enough food to feed an army. Merritt's brother visited from Denver, staying up late to talk about mortality and meaning and making peace with the uncontrollable. Merritt and Sloane also kept their promise about honesty. When Sloane had bad days, when the treatment made her sick, when fear overwhelmed her, she told Merritt instead of hiding in the bathroom. When Merritt felt angry or terrified or helpless, he shared those feelings instead of putting on a brave face. Their conversations were harder, messier, more real than they'd ever been. 3 months after that terrible, transformative night in Chicago, they sat in Daschle's office reviewing Sloane's latest scans. The tumors had shrunk by nearly 70%. Not remission, not yet, but moving in that direction. I don't want to oversell this, Dashiell said, but he was smiling. But Sloane, you're becoming a case study in how powerful the right treatment at the right time can be. If this continues, we're looking at potential long-term survival. In the car afterward, Sloane turned to Merritt with tears streaming down her face. But this time, they were tears of joy. We might actually have a future, she said. A real future. We always had a future, Merritt said. It just looks different than we thought. They drove to the lakefront where they'd sat months earlier, processing the revelation that pharmaceutical companies could be both evil and necessary, that hope and injustice could coexist, that fighting for your own life sometimes meant compromising principles you'd rather die defending. I still think about the other patients, Sloane said, watching the water. The ones who didn't get into the private trial, the ones who are dying while Hadrian sits on this research. I know. I think about them too. The NDA expires in 2 years, Sloane said quietly. 2 years from when I signed it. And when it does, we tell the whole story, Merritt finished. Every bit of it. The kidnapping, the coercion, the treatment that works but isn't available. We make enough noise that they can't ignore it. They'll come after us with lawyers. Let them. We'll be ready. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Lake Michigan. Two people who'd journeyed through betrayal and revelation and emerged on the other side, changed but together. The future was uncertain. It always had been. They'd just been naive enough to think otherwise. But uncertainty didn't have to mean despair. It could mean possibility. As they drove back to their hotel, Sloane's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Kensington, who'd been quietly working with patient advocacy groups to push for FDA reform. Don't lose hope, the message read. Change is slow, but it's coming. Your fight matters. You know what I realized? Sloane said, showing Merritt the message. That night when you came to surprise me, when you walked in and thought I was having an affair, that was the moment everything changed. If you hadn't come to Chicago, I might have kept lying indefinitely. I might have died without ever telling you the truth. So I guess I did surprise you, Merritt said with a sad smile. Just not the way I planned. The best surprises never are, Sloane said. 6 months after that night, 6 months of treatment and fighting and living, Sloane's scans showed no evidence of disease. The tumors were gone. Not cured, Dashiell cautioned. Cancer that advanced could always return, but in remission, which in the language of medicine meant hope, meant time, meant possibility. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them, with champagne in their own kitchen, the bottle that Merritt had bought for Sloane's successful presentation. The celebration that had been derailed by crisis and reinvented by survival. To us, Merritt said, raising his glass. To the truth, Sloane added, even when it's devastating. To the future, they said together, whatever it brings. They drank and kissed and held each other in the kitchen where they'd made thousands of ordinary meals, where life had happened in its mundane beauty for 23 years. The house around them held their history, the good and the bad, the lies and the truths, the ordinary and the extraordinary, all woven together into a marriage that had been tested and broken and rebuilt stronger. Outside, stars emerged in the Bellingham sky. Inside, two people who'd learned that love wasn't about protection or perfection, but about showing up honestly, even when honesty hurt, even when the future was uncertain. Even when the only promise you could make was to face whatever came next together. And in that kitchen, on that ordinary evening that was also miraculous, that was enough.